it going, guys? Welcome to Audio Addiction. Welcome to Backstage Press, and we have Punk Rock MBA with us, and he can say his name and what he does.
Hello, everybody. I'm Finn McKenty. You may know me for my YouTube channel and podcast called the Punk Rock MBA, and we're here to chat and, I guess, answer some questions.
Yes, I really do appreciate it. I feel like Finn is really onto something, and I want to say that I had found out about your YouTube channel through Fluff.
Oh,
I
okay.
watch a lot of like guitar videos, and he happened to be doing like a Q&A sort of thing, and he was like, "What's something that you watch like on YouTube?" And he was just like, "Oh, watch Punk Rock MBA, all that sort of stuff." But I don't know if there's any sort of like information about like how you started out doing the YouTube thing, and like how you began. So I guess if you want to start talking about that, I'm curious to know how you got into the whole YouTube thing.
Well, I've been making content in one way or another since, I was 14 or 15. I started
Okay.
out making zines back in the day. And then after, those sort of stopped being a thing, I did blogs for a while. And then after that stopped being a thing, I was like, well, where do I go now? And it seemed like YouTube was the natural next step. So I did that. And, it took me a while to kind of get it off the ground. It took me about 9 months or so before I got any kind of real traffic on anything, which I actually
Hmm.
think is that's not that it takes a lot of people much longer than that.
Yeah.
So I feel fortunate that it only took 9 months, but it was still a long road to get there. It was very discouraging in the beginning, but thanks to people like Fluff, who is he's a good friend of mine.
Hmm.
IRL, we live in the same area, and we knew each other before I did YouTube and all that stuff. Thanks to people like him, I was able to kind of get things off the ground faster than a lot of other people did. But that's how we ended up here.
That's awesome. And I guess like what was your first kind of like interaction like doing band stuff? Like obviously you mentioned you do the zines and stuff. So like what made you kind of want to do, the YouTube channel around music? Like was that something that's always been, I feel like it's most a part of people's lives because it's something they're passionate about or it's something they enjoy or something like that. So I guess what made you kind of, like you can do anything on YouTube. So what made you kind of like gravitate towards doing music?
Well, it's what I know. The channel was originally more about business,
Hmm.
but turns out nobody gave a shit what I had to say about business.
I feel like
And
that's not true, but
well, they might now, but they didn't
yeah.
then. Um, and so I said, well, with YouTube, you see this a lot. A channel starts out with a certain direction,
Sure.
and it doesn't work, and they pivot and I mean, with any kind of creative thing, lots of times you listen to a band's first demo, and it's a totally different genre than what they ended up being. You see this a lot, and um, I know music. That's what a lot of people from when I was blogging and doing zines and stuff like
Hmm.
that. The people who did follow me, that's what they knew me for. And when I started talking about music is when things started to take off a lot more. And I said, well, I guess this is what people want from me. So I try to kind of weave the business stuff in there. Um, and, I think of it like, a spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down. But talk about a band you like and maybe teach you a little bit about business along the way, then I'm happy.
I think I appreciate both aspects of it because I went to school for marketing, and so a lot of my like knowledge and stuff, I like learning about what you kind of do because for me, it's like okay, I know he comes from a business background, and so for me, it's like I learned that way. But obviously, I think you take it just a step further and then analyze bands that I personally like as well, and so. I think it's just that for me, that fine line between both of those things that I enjoy. So, when Fluff had introduced me to your channel, I was like, this is the perfect match because like I like both of those things and they're both things that I am passionate about. So I was trying to like figure out, even with this thing, I was like trying to figure out like who can I have on that would just kind of merge those two worlds together. And I felt like, you were definitely kind of the first person I could think of off the top of my head. But I guess how do you kind of go through the process of picking like which things to talk about? Do you have like kind of more of a list, or is it sort of like something you sit down, you're like, maybe we're gonna talk about like you just did one about periphery. So like, how do you kind of figure out what to talk about? I guess.
Well, I mean, it's always. I mean, you know this. I'm sure it's always a guess as to what people are going to like. You never know.
Yeah.
So I start with it's sort of, I think of it as like a Venn diagram of what do I know about slash care about, and then the other circle is what does the audience care about.
Sure.
And I try to find the overlap of those two things. In the case of Periphery, I mean, I've known those guys forever and I've worked with them a bunch, so I can talk about that with authority. And I know that they're a very internet popular band, so
Sure.
To me, it's usually what I think about is a thing that I know people on the internet or on YouTube specifically care about, and then I try to think, is there an angle that I can take on this that is different from what has already been done or said, or what someone else might do. Like, I don't do album reviews because there's a lot of other people like Anthony Fantano that do it better than I do. I mean, it's not what my channel's about. There's other people who do it really well, and I'm not one of them. Or I don't do news really because, again, like, nothing wrong with that, but like Rock Feed, he does a great job of that.
Yep.
Or fill in the blank, so to me it's like, what is my particular lens on this? How can I make a video about this thing that I don't think anybody else could make, or at least anybody that I'm aware of? Not that I'm so special and unique, but I mean, we all do have a individual lens on something. We are, because we're all a product of our experiences, and we've all had a unique life. As a creator, instead of trying to do the same thing as what someone else did, which never works, I saw a bumper sticker once. It's kind of corny, but it's true. Be yourself. Everyone else is taken. And it's true. It's the only choice you have. Where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey.
What part?
Burlington County. So like I'm kind of like in the middle of the state, pretty much.
Okay, got it. But I mean, just by virtue of being from Central Jersey, you have a different outlook on things than somebody that's from Kansas City.
Yeah, so I think it's about like, placing where you're at and trying to utilize, obviously I live pretty close to New York City. I also kind of live much closer to Philadelphia. So a lot of my stuff and a lot of the bands that I kind of try to focus on are in like New Jersey, obviously Philadelphia area and kind of like tri-state area and stuff like that. And obviously you live in, I believe it's Oregon, correct? Seattle, Washington. So like obviously you live on the West Coast, so it's a totally different thing. So I think it's important for that. And I guess what are sort of the things like for like bands and stuff do you like that interest you in terms of like social media presence? Obviously you talked with like Our Last Night, so what made you kind of have like you went into like the podcast realm and you have people on that talk about that, so like was that something that you wanted to do, or was that something like, you're like, oh, well, this would be a good like building block to what I'm doing for like the YouTube channel?
You're asking like, how did I end up doing the podcast?
Yeah. Was that something prior to the YouTube channel, or was that kind of like...
No, I just started the podcast in January. I've been wanting to do one for a long time. It just never worked out because I didn't have time, basically. And so I just hired somebody to be the producer and editor. Mm-hmm. The idea for the podcast is to be able to have more, YouTube, people come to YouTube for entertainment.
Sure. And
at least the majority of people. And so for me to have a in-depth look at something like ordering merch sizes, I'm interested in the nitty-gritty kind of operational details of business. That's what my passion is. But YouTube it's very difficult to get people to pay attention to that on YouTube. Whereas I just did a podcast with Brendan from Counterparts, mm-hmm. where we talked about exactly that, about like how they order merch sizes and how they've like fucked that up in the past. Like, we went, on tour in Europe and we were expecting this thing to sell this much, but we got it wrong. So we had to air freight these to the UK, but then they didn't sell, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's kind of stuff I'm interested in. And I think that conversation has a home on a podcast in a way that it just kind of doesn't on YouTube.
Sure.
Not just, there's always, that said, I never want to say, oh, that won't work on YouTube, because there's always a way that you can find. There's always an angle to find on any subject that will make it work on any platform if you are creative and consistent and persistent enough. That said, I think there are inherently some things that just are kind of more of a natural fit on one platform than the other. And I thought I would really like to have in-depth, substantial conversations about business and not feel the pressure of trying to make it entertaining.
Yeah.
Because that's what I like to do. I like to sit down with people and have like very detailed conversations about how they run their business. And, I thought, well, podcast is a place to do that. So that's what I did. And, I talked mostly to music people now, or people related to music. For example, I just interviewed Adam Elmakayas, who's a, big music photographer. Just did one that hadn't come out yet with a guy named Drew Russ, who's a friend of mine that does music videos for like A Day to Remember and Pierce the Veil and Beartooth, nice. Sleeping with Sirens, all those kind of, big Warped Tour kind of bands. So for, I'm starting in the kind of music realm for now, because that's what my audience wants, but I'm going to try to, I'm going to trick them. They think they're coming for a music podcast, but it's really a business podcast.
Yeah.
Disguised as a music podcast.
I really do enjoy it. Like I said, it's kind of, for me, it's like a merger of both worlds. So I do like listen to it. And if you guys haven't checked it out, I'd highly recommend it, especially if you're more business focused and you want to kind of get the angles from, different bands that you love. I think it's a really good platform and a good idea. And obviously, best of luck with the rest of that. But I guess who would be one person you would want to have on, like, if you had like a dream guest, who would you want to have on your podcast?
What I would really, I'm really interested in the sort of template of artist that I would call my dream guest, because my wife is in the room right now. My dream guest would be probably like Kim Kardashian or Kylie Jenner. Because Kylie Jenner, do you know how much her fucking makeup company is worth?
I'm not entirely sure, but I know it's probably in the billions, I would assume, correct?
Yes. And how old is Kylie Jenner now? 23? 22? So she's a 22-year-old fucking billionaire.
Yeah.
And she is the most successful influencer of all time. She's the only, there's lots of people with big followings, although not many people with a bigger following than her, but she's the only one. She sold half her company for $600 million. She's the only one that has actually had an exit at that scale. There's nobody else that's had an exit at that level. I mean, that is a fucking venture scale exit.
Yeah.
That is no fucking joke any way you want to slice it. And so I'd love to, talk to her, and, Kim obviously is the template for that. I would love to talk, another person I'd love to talk to is Paris Hilton.
Nice. Yeah.
Because she was the person who created the template for that.
Yeah.
For being, a social media influencer who presents the appearance of being a dumb young girl, but is actually an intelligent entrepreneur. And I would love to talk to her, and both, again, I would love to talk to them about the details of how they run their business. Jeffree Star is another person I would love to talk to. I don't know. Do you remember him from like MySpace?
Yeah, I'm just old enough to be in like the tail end of MySpace, so I do remember that. So,
yeah. I mean, I remember him from doing a song with Hollywood Undead about sucking dick, you know?
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
And now his face is in the window of fucking Ulta.
Yeah. It's wild.
And his company's got to be worth the billions too. And from what I've seen, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos he's done with like Shane Dawson and stuff, but he seems like a very good entrepreneur and operator that seems to be very hands-on with his businesses.
Yeah.
And as far as I know, he didn't go to school for it or anything like that. So he seems like a hustler, and I would love to talk to him about operating the business. So those kind of people. I'd love to also talk to Iggy Azalea is another person who I think people have the wrong impression of her.
Sure, yeah.
Have you ever watched any of her behind the scenes videos?
I have not. No.
Go check look up. Yeah, look up Iggy Azalea behind the scenes, and I forget which one it's. It's one of the more recent ones. It's like 10 minutes long.
Okay.
She knows what the fuck she's talking about when it comes to like creative direction. I've worked in the creative realm, like in the agency side and stuff I did it for over 10 years. I've worked at Abercrombie and Fitch doing design. So I've been around a lot of real high level creative directors, and she's as fucking good as it gets. I was amazed. Like, she's giving direct, she's in the edit suite of the person editing of the colorist working on her music video. Musicians are never working with a fucking colorist.
It's
And
true.
and if they were, they certainly would not be able to give the kind of like direction that she was. She was talking like a very good, experienced agency creative director when she was giving the direction to the colorist. And I was like, what the fuck? And then it became clear, and she was dropping all these references to these like obscure 90s like indie movies and stuff, like Priscilla, Queen of the Desert and stuff.
Oh my god.
And
Yeah.
it became clear to me. I was like, oh, that's why all her videos look great, because she doesn't actually direct all of them, but she is the creative director for all this stuff. And if you watch all her videos, they're all incredible, and they all look really consistent. And in particular, like the one thread that runs through all of them is color. And so I think it'd be interesting to talk to her. And she never talks about this stuff publicly because
Sure.
nobody asks
Who
her
gives a
about it.
shit? Yeah.
They don't ask her. They just ask her like, "Oh, what was it? What was it like when you dated whoever? Or like,
Yeah.
what's your favorite flavor of banana?" Um, and I would love to ask her like, how the fuck did you learn? Because she got started when she was like 17, so
Yeah.
she definitely didn't go to film school or anything. How did you learn how to work with a colorist like that?
Yeah. Where did you get all your knowledge from? Pretty much. Like.
Yeah, and I'd be interested also to know, she has presence in a way that it's hard to have that kind of presence, to be able to give that kind of direction and have people follow it without pushing back is hard, especially if you're her.
Yeah.
you know she's this rapper that makes crazy like party music, and she needs to go from being that person in front of the camera and then I'll go behind the camera and be a creative director that the colorist will take seriously. And I'd be very interested to hear how she does that.
Yeah, how she kind of floats both of those lines between, like, obviously being kind of like the boss and like the overseer of everything, but also like obviously the artist
An
that makes the
entertainer,
music.
yeah.
Yeah, the entertainer.
Yeah, so I don't know, those are the kind of people I want to have on my podcast, which I don't know if that'll ever happen, but never say never.
Never say never. You gotta shoot for it. That's what I thought about this. So I'm glad we're here. But obviously, since you do a lot of band stuff, I figure I'd ask you some band questions that I typically ask. Who have you been jamming recently? Who's on your Spotify? What have you been listening to lately?
Well, let's look. Here it is. Let's take a look. Here is my recently played. Let's see. This is some random stuff people sent me. The Country Drive playlist I listen to a lot. This Dungeon Synth playlist is pretty good.
There you go.
Listen to a lot of this sort of stuff. Normani. Yeah, the Veronicas, Josie and the Pussycats soundtrack, Lil Pump. What else do we have here? Yeah, that's what I listen to.
You're all over the map for sure. I wouldn't expect
Mostly,
anything less.
mostly pop and rap.
Yeah, no, you definitely had a good mix, Finn, and obviously you had Periphery on there because you did Periphery recently. So yeah, no, I like the mix. But to kind of follow up that, if you're going to compile a dream tour lineup, Finn's lineup, what would it be?
I don't actually like watching bands, so I don't like going to shows. I just don't. So my dream tour would start at 4 p.m. And B, it would be, I think it would be like spoken word. It would be a speaking tour with
A
all the
speaking
people
tour.
it'd be like TED Talks with
Ooh.
all the people that I just that I just mentioned. I would like to see, um, maybe it would be headlined by Rob Dyrdek, who's a brilliant entrepreneur.
Yes.
Um, yeah, it'd be Rob Dyrdek and Kylie Jenner co-headlining,
This is sick.
giving TED Talks,
Okay.
with all the other people, with Paris Hilton and Iggy Azalea and Misha from Periphery.
Oh, okay. There we go.
That's my lineup.
That's awesome. And obviously, my personal favorite question I like asking to the bands. Obviously, you and your wife are big gamers, so if you could be a video game character, who would you be?
I'll ask her, if you could be a video game character, who would you be?
If I could be a video game character,
Yeah.
the main character Diana,
Why?
because she has balls.
Yeah, because she's a big titty shooter girl, anime shooter girl. Yeah, main character in Bayonetta. That's what we decided on.
That's your collective answer. I'm glad.
Yep.
Glad it was Bayonetta. And then the last thing, Finn, tell them about Punk Rock MBA. If they haven't heard of it already, but tell them where they can find you on social media and all that stuff.
You can find me on Instagram at Finn McKenty, FINNMCKENTY, or youtube.com/the Punk Rock MBA. But if you follow me on Instagram, I will spam you with information about everything I do. So that's probably the best place to go.
There we go. Well, please go check out Punk Rock MBA. Seriously, some really great content. I'm glad that I've been subscribed and been a fan for a while. And go check out his stuff. All the links will be below. If you enjoyed this interview, share it, like and subscribe. Make sure to go tweet at maybe Kim Kardashian and all those people. You know what to do.
Do it.
So, and thanks, of course, Finn, for coming on. I really appreciate it, man.
Anytime.